Well, next month's controversial auction of items belonging to former President Nelson Mandela, we're hearing, has now been suspended, according to a report by News 24. Shirts, as well as identity book, were among the items that were meant to go under the hammer. The South African Heritage Resource Agency has been locked in litigation with Madiba's eldest daughter, Mwasinga Mandela, over the auction. The SAHRA's Ben Mwasinga joins us now to talk more about this. Ben, a very good evening to you. Good to have your time. Are you able to confirm, as is being reported by News 24 tonight, that this auction has been suspended, and is it at your request, basically?
Good evening, Tembekile, and good evening to your viewers. Yes, I can indeed confirm that we have received formal communication from Guernsey's auction house that the auction has been suspended. And yes, we did also send them a formal request to suspend the auction. So again, I'm not going to state that it was based on our request only, but we are happy with the outcome.
So what did they say when they communicated to you? What detail did they include in the communication?
No, it was a general notice that they will be suspending the auction pending the outcome of the judgment on whether or not will be granted leave to appeal the hearing. But also we did inform them that according to South African law, if you lodge an application for leave to appeal, it suspends the previous judgment for that period. So in this instance, it would have been, I think, very irresponsible had they proceeded to an auction with items that are still being considered by the courts.
And the issue then of consideration by the courts, when do you expect that that'll be able to wrap up? Because as things stand, Madiba's eldest daughter still very much wants to have these items put under the hammer for another project in his memory, as is being reported.
Yeah, I can't speculate at this point in time because we will be given our date by the court, which we have not received as yet. But we did hope that this matter would be heard, hopefully within February. But again, I'm only speculating.
And the issue with the word suspension is that it's just that. It's not a cancellation. So if things don't go your way in court, some of these items that you think are very important as far as the preservation of Madiba's legacy, his link to this country as one of its foremost political figures, they may still be lost.
Yes, it's a very huge risk, which is why we actually launched this application in the first place, because the first safeguard against those type of actions is our regulations and our laws, which do not allow these type of items to be exported without a permit, which was not obtained by Dr. Makaziwe when she exported these items. So yes, it is a big risk. We are taking it into consideration. But at this point in time, I think our number one priority is trying to ensure that the court does grant us leave to appeal to the Supreme Court.
But then was it not sloppy of the people charged with the preservation of Madiba's legacy to not have secured these items? And by secured, I mean that arrangements would have been made in the last, we're going to the 11th year now since his death, that they would have been kept, for example, something like an identity document, some of the memorabilia, etc., kept in a safe place where no single individual would be able to make such a big decision. Because ultimately, as you say, it's one thing for him to be the head of the Mandela household, now late, of course, but also he had a unique position as this country's first democratically elected president. So why weren't they secured?
Well, it's a very good question that you're asking. And the first thing that I'll say is that there are thousands of these resources within South Africa because they don't only relate to the former president, Nelson Mandela. They also relate to former President Zuma, former President Mbeki, former President de Klerk. So there are thousands and thousands of these items. And former President Mandela was a human being who also bequeathed his belongings to his children, his grandchildren, like any other human being would. So that's why we have regulations in place that state that if you have items that you know belonged to a former head of state in South Africa, before you export them, approach SAHRA so that we can advise you, number one, on the process, and number two, we might tell you that the green ID book is completely inappropriate to export. It's highly significant. It was the green ID book that was used to cast his first vote in the first election of 1994. But in the absence of presenting these items to SAHRA for assessment, we lose that opportunity. So we do have safeguards in the country. I don't believe it's our responsibility to go to each and every former president's family to count what they have. It's rather their responsibility to understand that the items that they possess that relate to these important political figures are actually protected under South African law.
And what do you think that the lessons, as this is unfolding in real time, are being learned to make sure that those necessary safeguards are indeed put in place before the death of another former head of state, and we have to do this again with their family or a relative?
Yes, as I say, the safeguards are in place, but in this instance, I can also concede to the fact that we need to strengthen our regulations and maybe even do a lot more public awareness. I think that the individuals that are in possession of these items, if they weren't aware then, they are aware now that these items are protected. So I do believe that irrespective of the outcome of the court case, we will be reviewing the regulations. But most importantly, we also need to notify these individuals that what they have in their possession are actually protected by South African law.
Mwasinga, good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight.